Hi everyone, welcome back to another Monday story time with me, Beth. Today I'm going to be continuing reading The Last Wish for you all. So let's see where we left off last time. I think we are still on the same chapter as last time. This one's a really long chapter. So we're on A Question of Price, chapter 2. What? What's this? Yelled Crate, jumping up. Her white hand in his. The princess, with this bristly stinker, with this pig snout. And I wanted to fight him like a knight, Rainfarn chimed in. This horror, this beast. Loose the dogs on him. The dogs! Guards, cried Calanthe. Everything happened at once. Crate seized a knife from the table and knocked his chair over with a crash. Obeying Ice's command, Dragbondu, without a thought, whacked the back of his head with his bagpipes as hard as he could. Crack dropped onto the table between the sturgeon in grey sauce and the few remaining arched ribs of the roast boar. Rainfarn leapt forwards. Urchin, flashing a dagger, rose from his sleeve. Kudkadak, springing up, kicked a stool under his feet, which Rainfarn jumped agilely, but a moment's delay was enough. Urchin deceived him with a short feint and forced him to his knees with a mighty blow from his armoured fist. Kudkadak fell to snatch the dagger from Rainfarn, but was stopped by Prince Windhelm, who clung to his thigh like a bloodhound. Guards, armed with gisarms and lances, ran in from the entrance. Calanthe, upright and threatening, with an authoritative, abrupt gesture, indicated Urchin to them. Pavetta started to shout. Ice Terceach to the curse. Everyone jumped up, not quite knowing what to do. Kill him, shouted the queen. Urchin, huffing angrily and baring his fangs, turned to face the attacking guards. He was unarmed, but clad in spiked steel, from which the points of his gisarms bounced with a clang. But the blows knocked him back, straight onto Rainfarn, who was just getting up and immobilized him by grabbing his legs. Urchin let out a roar, and with his iron elbow guards, deflected the blades aimed at his head. Rainfarn jabbed him with his dagger, but the blades slid off the breastplate. The guards, crossing their spear shafts, pinned him to the sculpted chimney. Rainfarn, who was hanging onto his belt, found a chink in the armour and dug the dagger into it. Urchin curled up. Jeannie! Pavetta shrilled as she jumped onto the chair. The Witcher, sword in hand, sprang onto the table and ran towards the fighting men, knocking plates, dishes, and goblets all over the place. He knew there wasn't much time. Pavetta's cries were sounding more and more unnatural. Rainfarn was raising his dagger to stab him again. Geralt cut, springing from the table into a crouch. Rainfarn wailed and staggered to the wall. The Witcher spun, and with the centre of his blade slashed a guard who was trying to dig the sharp tongue of his lance between Urchin's apron and breastplate. The guard tumbled to the ground, losing his helmet. More guards came running in from the entrance. This is not befitting, roared Ace Terceach, grabbing a chair. He shattered the unwieldy piece of furniture against the floor with great force, and with what remained in his hand, threw himself at those advancing on Urchin. Urchin, caught by two gisarm hooks at the same time, collapsed with a clang, cried out and huffed as he was dragged along the floor. A third guard raised his lance to stab down, and Geralt cut him in the temple with the point of his sword. Those dragging Urchin stepped back quickly, throwing down their gisarms, while those approaching from the entrance backed away from the remnants of the chair brandished by Ice like magic. Pavetta's cries reached a peak and suddenly broke off. Geralt, sensing what was about to happen, fell to the floor, watching for a greenish flash. He felt an excruciating pain in his ears, heard a terrible crash and a horrifying wail ripped from numerous throats. And then, the princess's even, monotonous and vibrating cry. The table, scattering dishes and food all around, was rising and spinning. Heavy chairs were flying around the hall and shattering against the walls. Tapestries and hangings were flipping, raising clouds of dust. Cries and the dry crack of gisarm shafts snapping like sticks came from the entrance. The throne, with Calanthe sitting on it, sprang up and flew across the hall like an arrow, smashing into the wall with a crash and falling apart. The queen slid to the floor like a ragged puppet. East Teresiege, barely on his feet, threw himself towards her, took her in his arms and sheltered her from the hail pelting against the walls and floor with his body. Geralt, grasping the medallion in his hand, slithered as quickly as he could towards Malsac. Miraculously, still on his knees, he was lifting a short hawthorn wand with a rat's skull affixed to the tip. On the wall behind the druid, a tapestry depicting the siege and fire of Fortress Ortgar was burning with very real flames. Veta wailed. Turning round and round, she lashed everything and everybody with her cries as if it were a whip. Anyone who tried to stand tumbled to the ground or was flattened against the wall. An enormous silver sauceboat, in the shape of a many-oared vessel, with an upturned bow, came whistling through the air in front of Geralt's eyes, and knocked down in the void with the hard-to-remember name, just as he was trying to dodge it. Plaster rained down silently as the table rotated beneath the ceiling, with Crack and Crate flattened on it and throwing down vile curses. Geralt crawled to Malsac, and they hid behind the heap formed by Fodcat of Strep, a barrel of beer, Drogadar, a chair, and Drogadar's loot. It's pure, primordial force, the druid yelled over the racket and clatter. She's got no control over it. I know, Geralt yelled back. A roast pheasant with a few striped feathers still stuck in its rump fell from nowhere and thumped him in the back. She has to be restrained. The walls are starting to crack. I can see. Ready? Yes. 1, 2, now! They both hit her simultaneously, Geralt with the sign of Ard, and Malsac with a terrible, 3-stage curse powerful enough to make the floor melt. The chair on which the princess was standing disintegrated into splinters. Pavetta barely noticed. She hung in the air with the transparent green sphere. Without ceasing to shout, she turned her head towards them, and her petite face shrunk into a sinister grimace. By all the demons, roared Malsac. Careful, shouted the Witcher, curling up. Block her, Malsac. Block her, or it's the end of us. The table thudded heavily to the ground, shattering its trestle and everything beneath it. Crack and Crate, who was lying on the table, was thrown into the air. A heavy rain of plates and remnants of food fell. Crystal carafes exploded as they hit the ground. The cornice broke away from the wall, rumbling like thunder, making the floors of the castle quake. Everything's letting go, Malsac shouted, aiming his wand at the princess. The whole force is going to fall on us. Geralt, with a blow of his sword, deflected a huge double-pronged fork which was flying straight at the druid. Block it, Malsac. Emerald eyes sent 2 flashes of green lightning at them. They coiled into blinding, whirling funnels from the centres of which the force, like a battering ram, which exploded the skull, put out the eyes and paralysed the breath, descended on them. Together, with the force, glass, majolica, platters, candlesticks, bones, nibbled loaves of bread, planks, slats, and smouldering firewood from the hearth poured over them. Crying wildly, like a great capercaillie, Castilian haxo flew over their heads. The enormous head of a boiled carp splattered against Geralt's chest, on the bare passant sable and damsel of Forehorn. Through Malsac's wall-shattering curses, through his own shouting and the wailing of the wounded, the din, clatter, and racket through Pavetta's wailing, the Witcher suddenly heard the most terrible sound. Kudkadak, on his knees, was strangling Drake Bondu's bagpipes with his hands, while with his head thrown back, he shouted over the monstrous sounds emerging from the bag, wailed and roared, cackled and croaked, bawled and squawked, in a cacophony of sounds made by all known, unknown, domestic, wild, and mythical animals. Pavetta fell silent, horrified, and looked down at the Baron with her mouth agape. The force eased off abruptly. "Now!" yelled Mousesack, waving his wand. "Now, Witcher!" They hit her. The greenish sphere surrounding the princess burst under their blow, like a soap bubble. Excuse me. Like a soap bubble, and the vacuum instantly sucked in the force raging through the room. Pavetta flopped heavily to the ground and started to weep. After the pandemonium, a moment's silence rang in their ears. Then, with difficulty, laboriously, voices started to break through the rubble and destruction, through the broken furniture and the inert bodies. "Quacko pa, schooly badrick, malum cooths," spat Crack and Crake, spraying blood from his bitten lip. "Control yourself, Crack," said Mousesack with effort, shaking buckwheat from his front. "There are women present." "Calanthe, my beloved, my Calanthe," East Turasich said in the pauses between kisses. The Queen opened her eyes, but did not try to free herself from his embrace. "Iced, people are watching," she said. "Let them watch." "Would somebody care to explain what that was?" asked Marshal Visegard, crawling from beneath the fallen tapestry. "No," said the Witcher. A doctor, Wilhelm of Attire, leaning over Rainfan, shouted shrilly. "Water!" wheeled Hill, one of the brothers from Strepcold, stifling the smouldering tapestry with his jacket. "Water, quickly!" "And beer!" Kukadak croaked. A few knights, still able to stand, were trying to lift Pavetta, but she pushed their hands aside, got up on her own, and unsteadily walked towards the hearth. There, with his back resting against the wall, sat Urchin, awkwardly trying to remove his blood-smeared armour. "The youth of today," snorted Mousesack, looking in their direction. "They start early. They've only got one thing on their minds." "What's that?" "Didn't you know, Witcher, that a virgin, that is one who's untouched, wouldn't be able to use the Force?" "To hell with her virginity," muttered Geralt. "Where did she get such a gift anyway? Neither Calanthe nor Rogner." "She inherited it, missing a generation, and no mistake," said the Druid. "Her grandmother, Adelia, could raise a drawbridge with a twitch of her eyebrows. Hey, Geralt, look at that. She still hasn't had enough." Calanthe, supported by Ice Tursich's arm, indicated the wounded urchin to the guards. Geralt and Mousesack approached quickly, but unnecessarily. The guards, recoiled from the semi-reclining figure, and whispering and muttering, backed away. Urchin's monstrous snout softened, blurred, and was beginning to lose its contours. The spikes and bristles rippled and became black, shiny, wavy hair, and a beard which bordered a pale, angular, masculine face, dominated by a prominent nose. "What?" stammered Ice Turasich. "Who's that? Urchin?" "Genie," said Pavetta softly. Calanthe turned away with pursed lips. "Cursed," murmured Ice. "But how?" "Midnight has struck," said the Witcher. "Just this minute. The bell we heard before was early. The bell ringer's mistake. Am I right, Calanthe?" "Right, right," groaned the man called Junie, answering instead of the Queen, who had no intention of replying anyway. "But maybe instead of standing there, talking, someone could help me with this armour and call a doctor. That madman, Rainfan, stabbed me under the ribs." "What do we need a doctor for?" said Mousesack, taking out his wand. "Enough!" Calanthe straightened and raised her head proudly. "Enough of this. When all this is over, I want to see you in my chamber, all of you, as you stand. Iced, Pavetta, Mousesack, Geralt, and you. Junie. Mousesack. Yes, your majesty. That wand of yours. I've bruised my backbone, and thereabouts. At your command, your majesty. 3. A curse, continued Junie, rubbing his temple. Since birth, I never found a reason for it, or who did it to me. From midnight to dawn, an ordinary man. From dawn, you saw what? Acrespark, my father, wanted to hide it. People are superstitious in Mate. Spells and curses in the royal family could prove fatal for the dynasty. One of my father's knights took me away from court and brought me up. The two of us wandered around the world, the knight errant and his squire, and later, when he died, I journeyed alone. I can't remember who told me that a child's surprise could free me from the curse. Not long after that, I met Rogner. The rest you know. The rest we know or can guess, nodded Calanthe. Especially that you didn't wait the 15 years agreed upon with Rogner, but turned my daughter's head before that. Pavetta, since when? The princess lowered her head and raised a finger. There, you little sorceress, right under my nose. Let me just find out who let him into the castle at night. Let me at the ladies in waiting you went gathering primroses with. Primroses, damn it. Well, what am I to do with you now? Calanthe, began Iced. Hold on, Tursic, I haven't finished yet. Junie, the matter's become very complicated. You've been with Pavetta for a year now, and what? And nothing. So you negotiated the oath from the wrong father. Destiny has made you a fool. What irony, as Geralt of Rivia present here is wont to say. To hell with destiny, oaths and irony, grimaced Junie. I love Pavetta, and she loves me. That's all that counts. You can't stand in the way of our happiness. I can, Junie. I can, and how? Calanthe smiled, one of her unfailing smiles. You're lucky I don't want to. I have a certain debt towards you, Junie. I'd made up my mind. I'd ought to ask your forgiveness, but I hate doing that. So I'm giving you Pavetta, and we'll be quits. Pavetta, you haven't changed your mind, have you? The princess shook her head eagerly. Thank you, your majesty. Thank you, smiled Junie. You're a wise and generous queen. Of course I am. And beautiful. And beautiful. You can both stay in Sintra if you wish. The people here are less superstitious than the inhabitants of Mate, and adjust to things quicker. Besides, even as urchin, you were quite pleasant, but you can't count on having the throne just yet. I intend to reign a little longer beside the new king of Sintra. The noble Ice Chiricich of Skellig has made me a very interesting proposition. Calanthe. Yes, Iced. I accept. I've never before listened to a confession of love while lying on the floor amidst fragments of my own throne, but how did you put it, Junie? This is all that counts, and I don't advise anyone to stand in the way of my happiness. And you, what are you staring at? I'm not as old as you think. Today's youth, muttered Mousesack. The apple doesn't fall far from. What are you muttering, sorcerer? Nothing, ma'am. Good. While we're at it, I've got a proposition for you, Mousesack. Pavetta's going to need a teacher. She ought to learn how to use her gift. I like this castle, and I'd prefer it to remain standing. It might fall apart at my talented daughter's next attack of hysteria. How about it, Druid? I'm honoured. I think the Queen turned her head towards the window. It's dawn. Time to. She suddenly turned to where Pavetta and Junie were whispering to each other, holding hands, their foreheads all about touching. Junie. Yes, your majesty. Do you hear? It's dawn. It's already light, and you. Geralt glanced at Mousesack, and both started laughing. And why are you so happy, sorcerers? Can't you see? We can. Geralt assured her. We were waiting until you saw for yourself, snorted Mousesack. I was wondering when you'd catch on. To what? That you've lifted the curse. It's you who's lifted it, said the Witcher. The moment you said, I'm giving you Pavetta, destiny was fulfilled. Exactly, confirmed the Druid. Oh God, said Junie slowly. So finally, damn, I thought I'd be happier, that some sort of trumpets would play, or force of habit. Your Majesty, thank you. Pavetta, do you hear? Said the princess without raising her eyes. And so, sighed Calanthe, looking at Geralt with tired eyes, all's well that ends well. Don't you agree, Witcher? The curse has been lifted, 2 weddings are on their way. It'll take about a month to repair the throne room. There are 4 dead, countless wounded, and Rainfan of Attyre is half dead. Let's celebrate. Do you know, Witcher, that there was a moment when I wanted to have you? I know. But now I have to do you justice. I demanded a result and got one. Sintra is allied to Skellig. My daughter's marrying the right man. For a moment, I thought all of this would have been fulfilled according to destiny anyway, even if I hadn't have brought you in for the feast and sat you next to me. But I was wrong. Rainfarn's dagger could have changed destiny, and Rainfarn was stopped by a sword held by a Witcher. You've done an honest job, Geralt. Now it's a question of price. Tell me what you want. Hold on, said Junie, fingering his bandaged side. A question of price, you say? It is I who am in debt. It's up to me. Don't interrupt, Calanthe narrowed her eyes. Your mother-in-law hates being interrupted. Remember that. And you should know that you're not in any debt. It so happens that you are the subject of my agreement with Geralt. I said we're quits, and I don't see the sense of having to endlessly apologise to you for it. But the agreement still binds me. Well, Geralt, your price? Very well, said the Witcher. I ask for your green sash, Calanthe. May it always remind me of the colour of the eyes of the most beautiful queen I have ever known. Calanthe laughed and unfastened her emerald necklace. This trinket, she said, has stones of the right hue. Keep it, and the memory. May I speak? Asked Junie modestly. But of course, son-in-law. Please do, please do. I still say I am in your debt, Witcher. It is my life that Rainfan's dagger endangered. I would have been beaten to death by the guards without you. If there's a talk of price, then I should be the one to pay. I assure you I can afford it. What do you ask, Geralt? Junie, said Geralt slowly. A Witcher who is asked such a question has to ask to have it repeated. I repeat, therefore, because you see, I am in your debt for still another reason. When I found out who you were, there in the hall, I hated you, and thought very badly of you. I took you for a blind, bloodthirsty tool, for someone who kills coldly and without question, who wipes his blade clean of blood and counts the cash. But I've become convinced that a witch's profession is worthy of respect. You protect us not only from the evil lurking in the darkness, but also from that which lies within ourselves. It's a shame there are so few of you. Calanthe smiled. For the first time that night, Geralt was inclined to believe it was genuine. My son-in-law has spoken well. I have to add 2 words to what he has said. Precisely 2. Forgive, Geralt. And I, said Junie, ask again. What do you ask for? Junie, said Geralt seriously. Calanthe, Pavetta, and you, righteous knight Tirasich, future king of Sintra. In order to become a Witcher, you have to be born in the shadow of destiny. And very few are born like that. That's why there are so few of us. We're growing old, dying, without anyone to pass our knowledge of gifts on to. We lack successors. And this world is full of evil, which waits for the day none of us are left. Geralt whispered, Calanthe. Yes, you're not wrong, Queen. Junie, you will give me that which you already have but do not know. I'll return to Cintra in 6 years to see if destiny has been kind to me. Pavetta, Junie opened his eyes wide. Surely you're not. Pavetta, exclaimed Calanthe. Are you? Are you? The princess lowered her eyes and blushed. Then replied, So that is where I'm going to leave it for you today. Next Monday, I'll be carrying on, and we are on The Voice of Reason 5. And it looks as though we're almost over halfway through this. So I hope you're enjoying it all so far. And I will see you next Monday. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.